Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Spiritual Sinners podcast. My name is Rachel. I usually have a co-host here, Samantha. We only have one episode up on her channel right now and then one on my individual channel because we've had some scheduling conflicts and some technical difficulties. So that's why you haven't heard from us in such a long time. Since Samantha is unable to be with me today, I am going to be interviewing medium Michael Mayo. He has a YouTube channel where he teaches you how to develop all your different clairs and things that have to do with mediumship and psychism and all of that. He also has a website that you can go to, and I will link all of his information in the description below. But today I am going to have a phone call with him and ask him some questions about his experience with mediumship and, if he has any advice, and just see if he can share some knowledge with us. So in just a minute, I'm going to get him on the phone and we will have a conversation. So stay tuned and subscribe, please. Share it with your friends. We're going to have more episodes to come. I promise you. It just, it's been a time. And today, with everything that's going on in the world, I think it would just be nice to have something else other than the virus being talked about. So today is March 20-something. What's today? 23rd. Today's March 23rd, 2020. And here we go. Medium Michael Mayo.
Hello?
Hello, Michael.
Hi, this is Michael.
Hi. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way. I just want to start off by saying that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Happy to be able to be helpful.
I appreciate that. Sorry if you hear my dog in the background, by the way. He seems to be crying at the window, so we'll try to cut him down as much as possible.
Aw, that's cute.
Yeah. So I am recording right now. So just to kind of let you know what our podcast is about. I don't know if you looked at it at all, but Samantha and I started the podcast so that we could offer people who are sort of in our same situation where we're like at the beginning of our spiritual awakening journeys and discovering, all the different truths about the universe and such, and to like help them see that it's not instant, that it's okay to kind of like feel like a fraud in the beginning and that you just have to work on it. So that's our intention.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I think that fits perfectly because a lot of what I do is connected with helping people in that stage. So I'm totally right there with that. So that sounds awesome.
Awesome. Well, good. So I do have some questions written down. I don't have to stick to them strictly. So,
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So first of all, I did do a little bit of research about you. I found your website and everything. And from what I understand, you've been doing this like mediumship and stuff for about 14 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I started my development when I was 18. And the short version of that story, essentially, I stumbled into a metaphysical shop and ended up in a mediumship demonstration. And in the demonstration, the medium came to me and said, "You're a medium, you need to start developing, and one day you'll be doing what I'm doing." And when that happened, I was like, "What?" Because I hadn't really had any kind of like experiences that really stood out to me that told me like, you should be a medium. Like, or I barely knew what a medium was. Like, I obviously understood that I was speaking to, departed loved ones because I was sitting there. But so then I went to my first development circle, and in that circle, got all this amazing information on the first go. So I was like, oh, I guess this guy was right. But then when I tried to do it again after, I blocked myself completely.
Oh.
And, looking back now, I know why. Then I didn't understand exactly why. The first time I was able to do it so easily, and then after that, it didn't happen. I think oftentimes the spirit world will dangle a little bit of a carrot to show you what's possible, and then and then do that, and then you have to work for it.
Yeah, you've got that thirst, so you got to keep going.
Exactly. But I also realize now too is I had too much expectation and desire and pressure that I was putting on myself, and so that's what shut me down. Oh. So that's what took the many years of sort of developing and trying to discover and learn and all that stuff. But so that's basically how I started into all of the sort of how my awakening began.
Yeah. Wow, that's very cool. That's so interesting to just stumble into a place and have somebody tell you that you're a medium. Did you ever talk to them and like ask them what it was that stood out that made them say that, or was it just they knew?
Yeah, so it was from a spirit person from the other side. So at the demonstration, they're giving messages to different people. So it's like a group situation. So for those of you who don't know, like what a demonstration is, essentially it's like the medium in front of a group of people, and then they're getting information from the spirit world, and then getting it from your loved ones, and then bringing it forward. However, this didn't come from a specific loved one. I believe it came from a guide or something like that, which is not really normal in a mediumship demonstration, but that's what happened. And he ended up being right. So no, I didn't end up speaking to him again about it because he was from the UK and he was just there to do that. So I had to kind of find my own resources once I
Oh, okay,
realized
okay.
all of this. So yeah.
That is very interesting. Well, I'm glad that, you continued on to develop it because, well, here you are today.
Right, exactly.
So
I felt like I really had a choice, to be honest. Like, I feel like everything I tried to do, everything else I tried to do would somehow lead me back to it. Now, I think all the things that I tried to do in my life were all helpful and good, but ultimately, like, I always kind of was, like, steered back to doing this kind of work. So, yeah, it's interesting how, if it's just meant to be, if that, like, you're meant to do something in the spiritual realm, like, as a job or as, like, just, like, as a service, I think you'll always kind of find your way back. So.
Destiny's kind of funny in that way, I guess.
It'll do that to you.
Yeah. So whenever you first started out, obviously it takes a long time to develop. Did you have doubts about yourself in the beginning? Like, did you ever feel like, they have like imposter syndrome where it's like, I don't feel like I should be doing this, or I feel like I'm a fraud. Did you ever experience any of those type of feelings?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I mean, that was like the majority of my development process. So, I think until you kind of have that moment that clicks for you, where you go, okay, this isn't just like this is like real. This is something that is objective. And I think for me, like, I think in the beginning I didn't have the kind of training where I would have said, this was the most effective, efficient training, and I sort of had to stumble into each of the new way of looking at things and experiencing things and trying things on and realizing, oh, that doesn't fit for me, or, oh, that's not giving me enough evidence and validation and proof. And for me, I have a very scientific brain. So anytime, along that journey, I would find a scientific reason to not believe in all of it.
Yeah.
That would happen for a while. And then I would find some other evidence that would suggest, okay, wait, there's something more going on here. So it was very much, I think a large part of one's development and journey is sort of discovering what is true, what is not true, especially in the beginning stages, is like, what's true for me, what is real, and then trying things on, and then if that doesn't work, that doesn't work. And I think that was a large part of my whole situation. I think I kept feeling like an imposter in some ways just because of, not having the proper training and not having things that, like, if I knew probably what I learned maybe like midway through my development earlier, if that would have been the grounding place, like I probably would have, in some ways developed quicker, or would have felt less of that, because in the kind of development and training with mediumship, you get validation and evidence as you're going along, and it teaches you what you're supposed to be paying attention to, versus, there's a lot of sort of different ways of exploring your spirituality, which oftentimes won't give any kind of validation or evidence, as in like, yes, that's correct, right?
Yeah.
So then we can sort of start to feel like, well, is this really working? Is this happening? What's going on here? So, you know what I mean? Like, it can just come across, you can just feel that way. So, I think really being grounded in, like, reality within your spiritual development and really looking for the evidence that what you're saying and doing and finding that truth is really going to be a huge part of helping you with that feeling of being an imposter. Because the sooner that you kind of get over that, the more that everything starts to open up and flourish, I think.
Okay, yeah. Well, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And the way that you were describing how you're very scientific about things sounds very much how my brain works. I'm very logical, and it's hard for me to get out of my own brain and kind of accept the things that are beyond scientific explanation. But
absolutely. Well, thankfully there's more science that's sort of supporting this kind of thing now, which is really, really helpful for our brains.
Definitely.
But also, one of the things that I would mention too is, like, what we have to realize is that our spiritual experiences come not from our logical thinking mind. They come from when we're able to actually turn that logical thinking mind off, and we're able to kind of move into the space of essentially feeling and other awareness. Like, in our day-to-day lives, we're so taught to pay attention to, you know, achieving and doing and active, as well as, prove this, prove that, show this. So it's all coming down to this sort of mental activity of effort. And I think it's super important for people to realize that it's actually about becoming still. It's about becoming quiet. It's about becoming passive. And that's actually how you'll get to have those real, genuine spiritual experiences that no amount of, like, logic is going to be able to explain away. So that's something I would say too.
Well, that sounds really good, actually. So I have watched a lot of your videos because I wanted to, see kind of what you were about, and something that you repeat in pretty much every single one of them, which helped me a lot, was sitting in the power. Because I had always heard, I've been trying to get into meditating and trying to clear my mind and focus, but everything that I ever saw before finding your videos was they say to breathe in and breathe out and, like, count, like 1, 2, 3, 4 in and out. And I take things very literally. So I found that would, like, disrupt my natural rhythm of breathing. And so I never have had success until I was watching your videos and the way that you described it as sitting in the power and, like, observing your breath, but not necessarily, like, forcing it, and just kind of, like, blending your energies. That actually has helped me, and I've been able to get out of my head a little bit more. So, so I wanted to thank you for that, first of all.
That's honestly a really important thing. It's like, the less we engage the mind when we're trying to meditate and develop, like, remember that the goal is to move your awareness from the thinking mind into this other state of awareness. So it's like, I think the less that we add other things, it's going to, activate our mind. There's all kinds of meditation, right? There's all kinds of things you can do, and there's all for different reasons, right?
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get out and have, like, a spiritual, kind of experience rather than, like, a psychological or a contemplative experience, which is oftentimes what meditation is doing there, then we need to find a way to disengage the mind while still becoming aware of the atmosphere, while becoming aware of what our experience is, without forcing or trying or moving it along. And so the breath is such a great way to sort of just attune our awareness to it and observe it, rather than try to, basically we're trying to just get less and less of your mind being active in the process, essentially. Like, that's the simplest way to put it in. And your breath travels well. I mean, you stop breathing and you will die. So.
Yeah, it's very important, for sure.
You can just become aware of your breath, right? And then that kind of helps to take your mind off of trying.
Do you find when you're teaching people, because you do teach people things, you have classes that you teach about mediumship and psychism. Do you find that there are a lot of people that, for some reason, like, the breath doesn't work? Do you have other tips and tricks to, like, get out of your mind and have your mind calm down and not be so much there?
Absolutely. There's plenty of people that the breath thing does not work for. So other things that you can do is acceptance. That's a huge one. So accepting that where you're at, wherever it is that you're at, like that day, in that moment. It's not about trying, it's not about the goal or even achieving a sense of this is where, I'm trying to get to. It's about accepting whatever is happening to you in that moment. It's like meeting every single thing that you experience with a sense of love and calmness and acceptance. When we do that, it takes away the pressure off of us, like that we're trying to actively try something. It's rather now we're just becoming present with what is in the moment, and all we have to do is just continue to breathe through that process, whatever it is. And it's like accepting these things and then just letting them go. That's sort of essentially the practice, is like becoming aware of something without attachment to it or without following it down the rabbit hole of your thoughts. So that's another way to look at it, is accepting whatever is happening in the moment for you. Another thing you can do is become aware of what you're feeling. So rather than, a lot of people, like, human beings are such visual creatures. We love using our imagination and our visualizing mind. We want to see everything because that's how we pretty much go through the world. But what I encourage a lot of my early students is to just focus on the feeling. What do you feel in that moment? What are your sensations that you're experiencing, and how is that impacting you? And by being aware of just like what my body feels like, being aware of the space around me, so not just within my body, but what does the air feel like around me? And not just in a physical sense, but also in a sort of like sensational sense. Does it feel thick? Does it feel light? Does it feel warm? And so you're just sort of bringing your awareness and your focus onto something that is ever-changing. So as you relax into these not mediumistic, but meditative sort of states, you will the atmosphere begins to change. Your body begins to change. You start to feel heavy, or you might feel tingly, or a warmth, or a buzz, or a gentle hum in the body. You might feel a pressure, all kinds of things. And so what you do is you just sort of bring your awareness to what am I feeling moment to moment, and then just acknowledging that, but then letting it go. So it's sort of like every time that I experience some new sensation or something comes into my awareness, I acknowledge it, but I don't try to grab onto it. I don't try to do something with it. And I just relax past that point and let it kind of continue on. It's like those little moments are like little breadcrumbs that are telling you, yes, what you're doing is working. It's moving you into a different state of awareness. So now all you have to do is to just continue to do that. Relax into it each time you do that. They're like little signposts. You're like, okay, yep, this is working. There's a couple of ways that you can sort of use. If the breath doesn't work, there's some other ways you can work with it.
That's very helpful. Definitely very helpful. I'm going to, after we get off this call, I'm definitely going to try to put some of those into practice to see if I can't help myself as well.
The other thing I would say, too, is just be patient with yourself. Like, there isn't a goal. It's just about experiencing. That's it. So each time you sit, it's going to be just an experience, and just allow yourself to experience that. I don't know if you saw on my website, I have sitting in the power meditation, which I kind of guide people through. So that's also there too. So
okay, yeah, that's definitely something worth checking out. And by the way, I am going to link everything in the description box below. So if anybody wants to come find you and follow your meditations, they can. Being somebody who teaches people, what would you say is like the most challenging part of that?
Of being the teacher, or of students learning, or what part would you say?
How about of being the teacher?
The most challenging part? That's a hard question, only because, like, for me, I guess it doesn't really challenge me per se, in the sense that, it's something that, like, I feel like I need to overcome. Essentially, with my teaching philosophy, is like, all I have here is to just give you what has worked for me, and you can use it, you can try it, you can take it, or you can leave it. All I ask is when people, work with me in my classes, is that they try.
Okay. So
if you're just going to, like, give up and you're just going to be like, I can't do it, then I'm like, okay, well, we should work on that, because that's the only way you're going to, figure it out. I would say the only time it's really challenging, I would probably say, is when, like, someone comes in with their cup already full. So that can be pretty challenging when they think they already know, and that's rarely happens. Like, I think it only happens like 1 or 2 times.
Oh, okay. So you don't experience that a lot.
Yeah, I don't experience it a lot at all. And that can be challenging, because then they then they're unwilling to try things in a different way. And essentially, you just learn as a teacher that you just adapt to whatever the situation is. And each student has their unique needs. So you just learn very quickly what those things are, and you try to give what you can with each student. So yeah, that's what I would say is like probably the most challenging. But at the same time, challenging it wouldn't be the right word. It would be just like that's the job of being a teacher.
Yeah.
Being able to identify what's happening with each person and then like supporting them in a way that they can actually receive it.
Well, I think that's definitely a very good quality in somebody that is a teacher, is being able to recognize that fact where it's not a one size fits all, it's an individual thing. So I'm glad that you said that, because that's definitely very important. Whenever you get students, do you have, like, I don't know if you have a way to tell whether or not somebody has an ability, if you can like sense things, but have you ever been able to like, somebody comes up to you and wants to be in your class and you like know immediately that they have like some really, really high capabilities, or is that just depending on, I don't know what it would depend on, but.
Yeah. So, there is a way to sort of feel that, and what's what I often call it like a squishy aura. So like some people, it's my own term that I made up. I didn't learn that anywhere. Some people have what I call a squishy aura, which just means that they feel like very receptive, like they feel like they're easily impressed upon. And that has shown me, that usually means that they have a sensitivity there for that. However, the thing with mediumship in particular, and actually really any psychic sort of awareness, is it all can be learned. So it's all a very natural thing. It's just, the way that I talk about it often is, a great medium of the past, Gladys Osborne Leonard, had once been asked a very similar question, which was, are people born with this, or is there, is this a skill, or is it something you can develop? And she said that people have it in varying levels underneath the surface. So some people it's very close to the surface, and other people it's much deeper. And so it's just a matter of becoming aware and giving the spirit an opportunity to sort of unfold whatever gifts are there. So even if I did feel that someone had some sort of, potential, they would still have to develop it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like they would still have to do the work, and they would still have to do all of that sort of thing. But for me, even if because like for myself, I had no idea that I had any ability at all. I knew that I had like dreams that would come true, and like there are some things now when I look back, I go, okay, that probably was a hint. But at the time, I had no idea, and I always saw these gifts and things like that as these like you're either born with it or you're not, or these like unattainable sort of things that you have to already have that. And the reality is actually because you're a spiritual being, it's there. It's you are spirit. There's no reason why you can't then connect with spirit. Some people, it's just a little bit more work because they have a really strong mind. This is why development takes so long. It's not because of what like our natural ability. The development takes a long time because we're trying to train ourselves in our brain to work differently. Our awareness. I shouldn't say our brain because I feel like that's a separate thing. But our awareness to focus on these more subtle cues and that sort of thing. So, so that's what I would say. I think anyone can really develop it.
That's very encouraging, especially for somebody who's just starting out and feeling like a fraud. That definitely would, it makes me feel better. Like I'm not crazy. I can develop. And
absolutely. It's like any other skill. But can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
What makes you, like, when you say you feel like a fraud, like what part of it makes you feel that way?
I think it's mostly specifically for me. So I don't know if I have the capability for mediumship. I know that I am clairsentient, definitely. But it's always been like a part of, I just know and feel that things are going to happen before they happen, but it always just kind of felt like regular life. And then the way that everything is portrayed, like in the media, and I was raised very, very like in a Christian household, very traditional. Yeah. And so like I feel like my brain is just kind of wired to say, no, that's not right. That's not like you're just kind of tricking your mind. So that's, I don't know, that's kind of what my brain is doing to me, but I am learning to overcome it. And so I'm trying to validate myself more and more and more and know that things aren't going to be instantaneous, because you know, we love instant gratification with the internet and everything. You can just get something in the snap of a finger. So like when something takes time, learning patience, I think, is the thing for me.
Can I tell you that I had no patience before becoming a medium, before developing my mediumship? I wanted everything yesterday.
Yeah.
And the thing that developed my patience is actually mediumship and my spiritual development, because it's an unfoldment over time. And that's really one thing that I really want people to understand, is that don't be in a rush because there's no goal.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've been doing this for however long, and my teachers have been doing this, you know, for 30 plus years, and, you know, they still develop. They still grow. They still deepen their connection. So there really is no end goal. And I think a lot of times, especially within like the first 2 years of one's development, we get really excited about everything. We're like, oh my God, I want to share this with the world, and I want everyone to know, and like, that's what's happening with me, and blah, blah, blah. And they just get super, super jazzed. And that's great. We love enthusiasm. That's fabulous. But then the danger part comes when people have an idea of where it is that they want to go with it all, and like they're going to work as quickly as possible to get to that goal. So whether that's becoming a reader or becoming, you know, a medium, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, they're going to sprint to the end goal for themselves. And what happens is, after the first couple of years, then there comes this sort of like returning to oneself and going, oh, okay, maybe this isn't, you know, that. And then after about 5 years, you look back and you're like, oh, wow, I was super eager beaver. And like, now I have this like much more grounded sense of like my spirituality, my spiritual development. And so that's just one thing I would definitely kind of like tell people is like, you know, don't be in a hurry. Just let it unfold as it's going to unfold, and learn as you go. But to speak about kind of, you know, what you're describing as like the fraud part is, it definitely can feel like it's coming from you. But the thing that tells you that it's not is when you get the validation from the other people, or the experience, or like no one who's going to call before they do. And, you know, all those little things that kind of add up to tell you,
yes,
you know, this is something real. I would also kind of say too, is like, the more that you have more experiences with regards to like feeling the presence of spirit, feeling like this presence of, you know, your helpers and your guides and those things, as that continues, there will eventually be an experience that kind of tips the scales the other way, where you finally go, okay, you know. So just know that this is like a normal, natural part of what your development, and like, it's totally cool, it's totally normal, and just allow yourself to just trust and just go along with it. But like, I can tell you, trust till I'm blue in the face, but until you've had that one experience that goes, oh, okay, this actually is real and validating, you know, it's not really going to, that feeling will always kind of be there until that point. But
yeah,
you'll get there.
It is nice to know that's common. So good on that.
Super common. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so one thing with everything, you know, there's like light and dark. There's people that intend to do harm and stuff no matter what community you're in. Have you encountered any people that you've had to kind of like sort of protect yourself from? Like my friend Samantha, my normal co-host, she talks about psychic attacks. Have you ever experienced anything like that? No.
Never have I ever experienced anything negative from the spirit world or anything energetic in that sense. Like, that's one thing I always want to really be clear about, is like, we have nothing to fear from the spirit world. There's so many, like, I can go deeply into this, but I'll try not to go too crazy. But this is one of those things that I'm super passionate about, because when it comes to like the other world, the spirit world, there's no such thing as like evil spirits. There's no such thing as like, you know, attachments and all these things that like people talk about, and you know, that some people may not agree with that, and that's fine. I'm very much a person that's like, you can have whatever beliefs that you want to have, and I'll just offer you an alternate perspective.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I say this is like, people often, you know, I think part of it is societal, cultural sort of belief system, because we have, within our Western world, Christianity played a large role. And then also within the media and things like that, we have all these like scary things, these battles between good and evil and all that sort of thing. In my experience, the only thing that I've ever experienced from the spirit world is love. And the more and more that I have, developed that and blended and connected with the spirit world, the more that I have felt love and kindness and generosity and just support and all the great good things, blissful feelings that you can feel. What I think is happening in those situations where people believe that some sort of, alternate thing is happening, I think it has more to do with our belief system and our misinterpretation of stimulus. So to use my sort of like mental sort of brain here, when it comes to, for example, let's say I was connecting with the other world and I started to have a spirit person come forward and I started to feel some kind of pressure around my throat or around my neck, okay? And if I were in a fear-based belief system, I could easily interpret that as, oh my gosh, I feel this pressure on my throat, like this thing's choking me or something like that, right? If I'm coming from a neutral place where I don't have that sort of fear or belief, I will interpret that as, oh, okay, they're putting pressure on my throat because they're trying to express something. So they're trying to, let me know maybe their passing condition or they're trying to express some other thing. And the thing that happens is the moment that we introduce fear into anything as we try to understand it, we're no longer objective. What starts to happen is that fear increases the experience, and then everything starts to become fearful and it adds up. And so then now that's when you get those big stories of people having all these crazy experiences, and then this happened, and then we had this haunted house, and then it just, you know what I mean? It all starts to like build and build and build. Rather than just dealing with what's happening in the moment, which is merely just a sense of a pressure on the throat. So that's just a tiny little example of what I mean. I think people misinterpret, they experience something, and then their belief system comes in and kind of changes it,
and then it snowballs kind of into a huge negative experience.
Exactly.
Like a bad trip on drugs.
100%. That's a great way to put it, actually. It's definitely a bad trip on drugs when we have those underlying belief systems. So it's super important for anyone developing. Here's the thing. Development and unfolding your spiritual awareness is hard enough alone without this added fear.
Yeah.
So when you throw in this added fear thing, then you really have another layer that you have to work through. When it comes particularly for mediumship, works the best when we are free. When we have this sense of freedom and this sense of relaxation and calm and ease, that's when mediumship is spectacular and you get all kinds of amazing experiences and details. If we have a fear that we need to protect ourselves or that we need to do something to prevent us from harm from the other world, we're already inhibiting ourselves in some way. We're saying, okay, I have to be careful, this is danger. And the reality is, in all my years, I've never had a bad experience, never, not once. I've had objects move off of tables and kind of all kinds of things. I've seen the tables floating sliding up a wall before. I've seen crazy things. Yeah, I've seen some gnarly things with spirit's ability and power and, lights in the room. And I've seen crazy things, which for people are like, what the what? And I've never been afraid. I've been to places that were quote unquote haunted and never a bad experience. So that's what I would say. I personally have never had that. And so I like to offer that to people and say look, you have this option to believe that if you want to. You also have the option to not, and nothing bad's going to happen to you. So just know that. The second thing I would say though is we have way more to fear from people in the physical than we have anything from the other world. But what often happens in the spirit, sort of the spiritual community is that, especially with healings and things like that, they'll be like, oh, okay, you have this attachment here and it comes from XYZ and blah, 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 blah. I'll let them have that one. I'll say, okay, sure. You wanna have, attachments and things like that? Fine, sure, have that. But realize that, there isn't consciousness with that attachment. An attachment in those settings, let's say you're getting a healing and they're saying you have an attachment or something like that, all that is just, it's a thought form. It's something actually the person, the individual created. It doesn't have a life of its own. It doesn't have consciousness. It's literally just like if we went to the doctor and we were looking at symptoms on the physical body, it's similar. We're looking at the energy. So what's happened is that a lot of people have taught that, that's an attachment that's connected to this person that's draining something or doing something, and it's not. They're just misinterpreting what they're experiencing in the energy. That's just the way that their belief system and understanding has kind of taught them that. So the reason I'm expressing all of this is because I'm trying to help prevent any extra. There's a lot of bullshit in the world, is what I'm going to basically say.
Yeah.
I hope I'm allowed to say bullshit.
Oh, yeah, this is fine.
Okay, great. There's a lot of bullshit out there, and a lot of stuff that's really unnecessary, and I really believe that our spirituality should be simple, because it is. And the more simple that we make it, the less complicated, the more we get the real experiences, rather than all this extra baggage. When we look at when someone's saying, here's this negative thing that's on you and I can take it from you, I can fix it from you, what happens with that is that we end up kind of giving our power away to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So they're saying, I can do this and you can't, I can fix this and you can't. And I don't like that at all. Like, we are in charge of our own energy. We are in charge of our own power. And, my teacher, Gordon Smith, would say, no one's a victim of spirit. And so I really feel strongly, in those instances, look at that situation and see, is someone trying to assert their knowledge or their power or their dominance in some way. So that's just something I would say, because we have the power to do everything for ourselves. While being a sensitive person, we can, because I want to talk, basically it's about the psychic attack idea. I think that people can send, energy or have negative thoughts, and thoughts are things to a degree. And so it's really our belief system that's going to play a role in whether or not we are experiencing the, negative effects of that. I have a belief that, no one else's stuff can get to me. I'm solidly in my space. I have my helpers that are around me. And, I would definitely say that for me, it's a belief system thing. The only way that someone could, harm us in any capacity is going to be because we gave permission in some way. When it comes to this level, does that make sense? This level of awareness. Obviously, in the real world, people can just come up and
stab you. Yeah.
But yeah. So what I want to say is, if that is something that's part of your belief system, you're more likely going to have experiences with that. But it's an unnecessary thing. You don't actually have to have that experience if you choose not to. So that just shows you that your belief and what you choose to have happen is much stronger than anything else. I want to say that, we as sensitives don't need to be mindful of our space and can get overwhelmed or feel anxiety or feel, fearful or when in crowded places or etc. We have to also be mindful of that, but that's a much more physical thing. That's like a much more mundane thing rather than some sort of spiritual kind of concept.
Yeah.
So those are my thoughts on that topic. I hope that was okay for me to kind of unpack that.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm glad that you did that, because it's helpful to get that perspective, because for me, the perspectives that I've had, for example, my usual co-host Samantha, she's going through a mediumship class right now, so she's trying to develop, but before that, we've had lots of conversations, and she talks a lot about protecting yourself, and her kind of way as she calls upon her spirit guides, and she says Archangel Michael and things like that, and say surround me with your divine light. And she has talked a lot about how it's important to protect yourself before you go into that. So you're actually the first person that I've heard say the complete opposite, essentially, of that. And that kind of makes me feel the mind is very, very powerful. And I've always believed that. And there's been things, about my life in the past that I thought I couldn't change, but then I just changed my way of thinking, and lo and behold, it changed in my life. And so I think both of you are right in the sense that, if she believes that to be what helps her stay protected and not, encounter anything negative. That's her beliefs, and that's what's going to manifest to her. And you having the belief that there is nothing to fear does the same thing, essentially.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, if that's what you need and that makes you feel comfortable and safe and whatever, go for it. I mean, that's totally fine. I mean, it's not really inhibiting you other than, just taking this extra step. But it's just very unnecessary when it comes to working with the spirit world, in my opinion, in my experience, and in those of who I've learned from. Like, there's plenty of, people like my teacher, Eileen Davies, who's an incredible, phenomenal medium. Gordon Smith, who's also an incredible, phenomenal medium. Both of them who've been doing this work for 30 plus years, they will tell you the exact same thing. There's absolutely nothing to fear from the other world. We have more to be concerned about from people here than we ever do from the spirit world. And I think it's just something really important to differentiate between consciousness and then also, like, just the energy, the energy of a space or the energy of a room and that sort of thing. Those are two very different things. So one has a will and a purpose and a desire, etc. The other one is just, it is. So, for example, if I walked into a place that felt thick and dense and, it just made me feel uncomfortable or something like that, that could be that energy just isn't harmonious to my energy, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to mean that it is negative, bad, or scary. It can just mean this isn't the vibration that matches mine.
Yeah, okay.
So if we look at energy in those terms of just vibrational states and them being harmonious or disharmonious, then we can see that energy is actually just neutral. And it's a matter of how we, being the creators, being the ones with the power to adjust and change it, then it's just a matter of our perspective and what we choose to do with that.
That's very helpful. I feel like I'm learning a lot from this phone call.
Yay, great. That makes me happy.
I'm excited for people to hear this because I think it will help them as well. What you were talking about, the energy, for example, in my own apartment, this room that I'm in right now, I've always felt like has kind of a creepy vibe to it. And so, like, if I'm walking past it at night, I feel like I get heebie-jeebies and the hair stands up on the back of my neck and I have to, like, clear the room and stuff. And so, being that I've only heard that there are things to fear from the other side, that definitely, I feel like, feeds into that. So from here on out, I think what I'm going to do is acknowledge when I feel that and then try to confront it, not really confront it, but, not be afraid of it and see if I can just feel that energy. So that is extremely helpful to me.
Can I offer something else with that?
Yes.
The way that we imprint and impact a space is by going into a space and we feel what we want that room to feel like.
Oh.
So remember that we are the ones that can color and impact space. So, like, everywhere we go, in the space around us, it can be imprinted with energy, because energy is everywhere. It can be imprinted with whatever we want it to feel like. So, they say oftentimes, like, in haunted places, why are they haunted? Why is one room different from another room? Well, because something traumatic happened in that room, right?
Yeah.
So this is the opposite idea. So this is, instead of putting something traumatic there, now we're just putting something positive that we want that room to feel like. And what we do is we go in and we just quiet our mind and we just feel what we want that room to feel like. We change it by imbuing it with the energy that we want it to have. And that's a way to shift sort of the feeling of it all. So a room that may be something that gives you heebie-jeebies now, should you, work on that, it will change, and then it can be a room that you love and you love to be in. So I want to just empower you to, take control of your space and take control of your experience of being in it. So
that is incredibly empowering. So yes, thank you so much for that. I do have a couple of questions that Samantha had asked me to ask you since she's in her mediumship class. She asks, when it comes to being a psychic medium, what types of ethics and moral codes should they be striving for every day? Do you have, like, a set of ethics or moral codes that you follow, or?
Yeah, so great question, Samantha. Fabulous question. I love it. That's such an important one to ask. So when it comes to mediumship, Despite what the TV shows and things are going to want us to tell you, we really should not be going around being open all the time. We should not be going around giving random readings to people. Because what we see in the media, it's like, oh, I feel your grandma and I'm at the grocery store and I'm like, your mom's here. You know what I mean? Like, we get this image that, you know, mediums are on all the time and that's how they should be. And the reality is that it's not. And we, as developed mediums, should be able to turn it on and turn it off. And not only that, we should also be able to discern when is the appropriate time and when it's not. Same thing goes for psychism. So if you are developing your psychic awareness, you're not going around feeling into everything. What is the worst, and you see this so much in like the spiritual New Agey sort of community, is what we call leaky faucets, which are constantly going around and saying, oh, you know what I feel for you? I feel blah, 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 blah. Unasked, uninvited.
Unsolicited.
Give their unsolicited, thank you. Psychic information, we call that leaky faucets, and that's just a big, it's annoying, but two, it's unnecessary and it's rude. It's like if we met and I just started rummaging around in your purse.
Yeah.
That would piss you off, right? We don't want to do that. That's not okay. So, you know, you have a huge responsibility as a medium or as a psychic, and this is why. Regardless of whether someone actually believes in what you're giving, the moment that they sit in front of you and they're willing to receive a reading from you, you are having direct access into this person's subconscious. Because something happens when someone sits in front of someone that says, I can get this information that you're not aware of, it just opens up their receptivity to what you're giving. So even if they don't believe in it, and you say something, and it will stick in the back of their brain. They will always have that there. So you can give all this information. They'll always have this prediction, or they'll always have this thought that you planted there if the moment came up. So that gives the medium or psychic a lot of power to do a lot of good, but also there's a great danger in that we can say or do something that could have a negative impact that's lasting. So it's super important, I think, for mediums and psychics to really be mindful of the impact that we're having. Mediumship and psychism should be a healing thing. If it's not healing, what's the point? Mm-hmm. Why are you doing it? And that's something super important to really ask ourselves who are developing this, what's the point of it? Because if it's just a parlor trick, cool, fine. Go do your parlor trick. But the reality is there's no value in that. The value is in healing, helping people grow, supporting people, healing. Like that's what it's about, and that's what it should be about ultimately. So for me, when it comes to any kind of motto, I would have to say it's like about boundaries. It's about healing. It's about being of service to others, and then realizing this isn't coming from you. This is coming from the other world. And you cannot do it without them. And so it is your job then to be respectful of that relationship, just as you would any other relationship. And by that I mean just making the time, to connect, and also for yourself, your own spirit. So, making your own self-care, your own self-support being super, super important and a priority as well, because we can't be pouring from an empty glass. Mm-hmm. So we have to fill ourselves up too. So it's boundaries, essentially. Boundaries for yourself, boundaries for others, all of that sort of thing.
That's great. That's fantastic. Have you encountered anybody that abuses that and does not pay attention to boundaries or doesn't respect boundaries? What would you say to people who do that?
I would say that like a lot of people, especially in like the kind of new agey sort of world, is like, you have to remember there are so many ego traps along the way. So as you are developing and as you're moving into your spiritual awareness, there are so many things that your ego is going to want to attach to as you are growing. You're going to want to attach to this idea of you being a medium or being a psychic, or the big one right now is an empath. Mm. There's these terms and these phrases and these identities. I don't want to speak negatively about anyone, but I will say that there was, someone in the spiritual community who came around. I'm not going to name anyone, and they put out a lot of information that had to do with like, oh, I identify as this, like I'm this kind of being, or I'm this kind of spiritual being, and like they gave all of these different labels. And the danger in labels is that then we identify and then we attach our ego to them. And really what we want to do is to avoid ego attachments. What we want to do is to just know ourselves. And like that's one of the biggest parts of the journey is discovering who am I, what am I about, what is the gift that I have here, what is my spirit wanting to express and share and show, and what can I give to the rest of the world. So the majority of it, just be mindful, because what will end up happening is that you'll have people that have these really, really long bios that are just like, I do literally every single thing. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen those yet, but it's like 38 million things that they do, and it's like every certification they had, every single like thing, and like, okay. So I feel very strongly that, we really should be, it's about ourselves, ultimately. It's about us understanding ourselves, and like, if you make that the priority, is like, who am I? What am I about? And then reaching out and saying, okay, once I understand me, now I can take it to the next level and try to understand these other experiences, these outer world experiences, these spiritual experiences. Does that make sense at all? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. I completely understand what it feels like to just like talk and talk and talk and feel like it's not making sense, but it does when you hear it back. So it is.
It's perfect.
You study astrology too, don't you?
Yes.
Do you find that plays an important role? Like, can it be used in conjunction with like mediumship and psychism, or is that like separate?
That's for me a separate thing, because, and I say that mostly separate. I would say astrology doesn't help mediumship or psychism, but psychism can help astrology, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Now, the reason I would say that is because while a really, really well-trained astrologer is incredible, I mean, the rules of astrology are just there, and like if you just follow the rules of astrology, you will get accurate, correct information.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there are times when, my psychism can like kick in and sort of like add to that. But ultimately, like, these two things are very, very separate, because astrology tends to be very analytical, numbers and that sort of thing, whereas mediumship and psychism requires your brain, your thinking mind to be aside and you to move your awareness into this other state. So that's what I would say is the difference there, and why these two things are separate. Like, I won't actually even do a psychic or mediumship reading after having done astrology, because my brain can't make that switch very easily.
Oh.
It's just me personally. I don't know how that is for other people, but it's like too left brain, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like too hard for me to kind of get out of my thinking mind. So I just keep those, like, I can do psychic or mediumship before doing astrology, but I won't do it the other way, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, and everybody's brain's going to be different, so somebody might be able to snap out of it super quickly, but...
Exactly, yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So whenever you're doing, like, readings for people, whenever they come to you for, to connect to their loved ones, do you have, like, a process that you go through beforehand? Do you require anything of them before they come to you? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so... in the beginning stages, I had a longer process. So in the beginning, I would make sure that I gave time to myself to just like sit in the power, become sensitive to the atmosphere, start to feel what's going on, and not to get information about who's coming and the sitter and all of that, but more so just for myself, so that I feel like, okay, I'm already sensitive. Because contrary to what the media says, your mediumistic and psychic states of awareness are a different state of awareness. It's not this normal one that when I'm working and I'm living my normal life, I don't receive any kind of psychic or mediumistic impressions. The only time that might happen on accident is if I'm doing something where I'm kind of daydreaming or mindlessly doing it. So like driving or doing the dishes or taking a shower or something that's like mindless, because that's sort of the state that you need to be in when you are, doing mediumship. But sorry, bring me back to what the question was, because my brain just went off into another world.
I was basically asking if when you're preparing, you have an appointment with somebody. Yeah. What do you do? What do you require anything of them?
Right. So originally it was a longer process. Now I don't really have any sort of process except for just give myself like 5 to 10 minutes before they get there, just to quiet my mind, just to kind of get my thinking mind to step aside and just sort of get myself mentally prepared, start to move my awareness into it. When I actually have a sitting with my sitters, I will, bring them in. I will, ask them, have they been to a medium before? Have they been to a psychic? And then explain to them how I work. So as I'm explaining to them how I work and like what I expect of them, how I want them to respond. For example, I only let my people, when they're getting a reading with me, say yes, no, I don't know, or I need more information.
Oh, okay.
So that's all that they can say. Especially if it's mediumship. If it's psychic, once I've established that I'm very connected to their energy and all that stuff, then I don't mind so much if they give, a little information. But ultimately, for me, it's easier because it keeps my mind out of it if they just say yes, if they can understand what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I'm telling them, they're not giving me or feeding me any information.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I'm explaining these things to them, and I'm saying how I'm going to work, what to expect, blah, 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 how I want them to respond. And as I'm doing that, my awareness is already beginning to move. Then what I'll do is I'll take just a few minutes to just quiet my mind just that little bit further. And then as soon as I begin to become aware of the spirit, I will start to describe what I'm experiencing. It kind of just takes off from there. So really my preparation was much longer in the beginning, and then now it's 5 minutes, right before.
Because like riding a bike now.
Yeah, exactly. And it also just depends on how much sleep did I have? Where is my mental awareness? Unfortunately, we're not machines where you can just drop a quarter in and get consistently every single thing every single time. But ideally, if you've developed your power, if you've developed your ability to move your awareness and keep your mind out of it, you'll likely have more consistently positive results.
Very interesting. And so in your experience, what do you experience when you are, is it different every time when you're connecting with somebody? Like, do you feel like you were describing earlier, like a tightening of the throat? Are you more like a physical like that? Do you hear voices? Do you see things? You said you've seen things being thrown across the room, but like...
That's a totally different kind of mediumistic experience, but yeah, that has nothing to do with when I'm doing a reading for someone. That was other ways that mediumship can express itself. But so when I'm working, it can come in all kinds of ways. So I would say my strengths are probably clairsentience and clairaudience.
Mm-hmm.
And then clairvoyance mixed in every so often. So that's what I would say. So when I'm working with someone, usually I'll feel the presence of the spirit person first, and then go from that. How do they make me feel? And this is how I'll get, all kinds of details regarding, their personality, their relationship, all kinds of things like that. And then I will see things, but very rarely. When I'm working mediumistically, I'm not very clairvoyant. When I'm working psychically, I'm very clairvoyant. I don't know why that is, but it's just that way.
Oh.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know why. Like when I'm working psychically, there's all kinds of pictures and all kinds of images that I'm following as I go along.
Really?
But mediumistically, it's largely feeling and hearing. So that's and then some little bit of images lately. And the thing is your mediumship will change as you grow, as you develop.
Uh-huh.
And so there's been times where clear sense was pretty much it, and I just had to go through the power of feeling. Which can give you everything you need. Any one of the clairs can give you everything. But what we want to do is become a multi-medium, so that way we can experience it all as a whole, because it'll give us more detail, more evidence, more.
More.
So yeah, just more.
That's awesome. Do you have to have your clients present, or do you do? I've seen some people will do Skype readings. Is that something, or do you need the person to be physically there?
No, you can do readings anywhere. So they can be in the room. They can be halfway around the world. I do have clients in Australia. I have clients all over the world, actually.
Oh wow!
So yeah, you can do them anywhere because they're not limited by time and space.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And so we are.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that is...
Oh, to answer your question, no, I don't need any articles from them. So there's nothing I require of them. I don't need a picture. In fact, for me, the less that I know, the better. I don't even want to know who you're here to speak to, because if that happens, then it will trigger my brain to want to get that. So the less that I know about a client, the less that I know who they want to speak to. The only thing I'm willing to have, and if I didn't have to, I probably wouldn't, is their name. So it's like the sitter, the client's name. But if I could not have that, I probably wouldn't either, and I would just be able to just work. Because for me, it's easier the less I know. The more I know, it's too tempting for my brain to want to figure it out.
Oh, okay. Yes, that makes perfect sense.
The less I know, the better.
So is it true that like it's hard to read for people that you know because you know so much about them, and so your brain would try to work, or are you able to do that for people like in your life?
I can do it for people in my life because I've learned how to sort of separate myself from that. However, it is more challenging in that you just have to be more mindful that you're not. It's harder to discern, I would say. Okay. Like, is this my mind or is this the spirit? But once you have a strong link with the spirit, there's no question what's you and what's not you. But in the beginning of your connection, it can be a little bit trickier. But, you just learn to follow along. That's ultimately what you want to do with mediumship, is like follow along. Let the spirit world sort of kind of teach you. Okay.
That is very, very insightful. There's a lot more information that I was unaware of prior to this conversation. So I'm very glad that you allowed me to pick your brain.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Before we finish out, I just wanted to ask general advice or anything you wanted to say to people who are starting out, interested, curious in any of this.
Yeah. So, I have a couple things. One, just keep it simple. Spirituality is not overly complicated. When you start to get into things like different levels and hierarchies and, oh my God, these people up here and these higher beings and blah, blah, you're just overcomplicating the whole entire thing. There's no need to even go there. It's about stillness. It's about being quiet. It's about going into one's own stillness within. If you look at any of the mystics, any of these, religions, you'll always find emphasis on quiet and stillness, and on how that's how we hear the voice of God. That's how it doesn't matter which religion you look at. It's always about going inward. It's about being still. It's being quiet, because they have an understanding that it's not about our active mind. It's about getting out of our active mind so we can become passive and still. And that's how we actually learn to listen. That's how we learn to receive. Everything you need, you have within you as far as your spiritual unfoldment. However, there are those who have gone ahead, who can guide you, who can point you in the right direction. And, we want to listen to that. What I highly recommend is always paying attention when looking for who you should learn from and that sort of thing is, does it resonate with you? And also, does it add fear or does it overcomplicate? If it does either of those two things, then I don't think that's necessarily someone that we should probably learn from. I think that you should learn from people who make you feel empowered, who make you feel supported, and who take away fear, because there's nothing to fear. There's only love. And ultimately, we want to bring ourselves back to that sense of love, because really, at the end of all of this, that's what we're all doing. That's what we're all growing and learning together, is how to love and what it feels like to be with it and without it. And when we return to the spirit, that's all that will be left. So my sense and my feeling is that just keep things simple, keep things centered in the humanity and the love between people and yourself. And it should all be building. It should all be uplifting. It shouldn't be fearful, scary, any of that other stuff. So that's what I would essentially say. That's sort of like the core of my philosophy. And hopefully it helps everyone who listens.
I feel like it will. Just speaking to you over the phone, I feel like I can feel your energy through the phone, and it's a good calming sense, which is very nice. So I think people will pick up on that. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I totally appreciate you reaching out, and please let me know if you want to do it again. And next time with Samantha, that would be great. So yeah, I'm always here.
Absolutely. And I will send you the link when it comes out if you want to listen to it or, follow if anybody is commenting and trying to find you. And I will link all of your social media, your websites, everything. I'm sorry?
Perfect. I'll send that to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Well, it was very nice to speak with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to speak to you again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was awesome. I hope that was informative to any of you that may have doubts. I know for myself, I have a lot of self-doubt when it comes to this because, like I said, whenever I was speaking to him, I was raised in a very traditionally Christian household and, the devil and God and all of that. And it was all very confusing. And I was also homeschooled until I was in 6th grade, so I didn't have anything else to go off of. When I was young, we didn't have the internet, so I couldn't I couldn't get on the internet and have all of these collaborative minds and see all this information. All I had was the information that was given to me. So I think it's important to know that it is okay to feel like you're not where you're supposed to be and that you're not making progress because it's baby steps. It's, a little bit at a time. I am very, very, very in the beginning stages of my awakening. It's been probably about a year now, and I do feel like I'm a lot further along than when I first started. I definitely have a long ways to go. And just like Michael said, even the people he knows that have been doing this for 30 some odd years, they're still growing and developing. It's just a matter of taking the time and being able to still and quiet your mind, even if it's for 10 minutes. If you only have 10 minutes to be still and quiet, that's what I have sometimes. And I feel like it really helps. So I hope that you found this interesting or helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. Also, please go check out Michael's channel. I will have that linked. I'll put a little card on screen so you can go over to his channel and check him out. If you're watching this on YouTube, it's the only place we're uploading it. So it's, most likely that's where you're going to be clicking on. Go check out his website, maybe take some classes from him, get a reading or something. But I really enjoyed our conversation. I feel like I learned a lot and I am excited to implement some of the things that he was talking about. And yeah, stay tuned for whenever the next podcast comes out. We are trying to do every single Wednesday. It might just be me doing singular episodes by myself without Samantha, and maybe I'll interview a couple of people. But please drop a like, subscribe, leave comments, whatever you want. Don't be hateful, please. And yeah, bye.